This is KTN.
Well, many thanks for staying with us, and in case you're joining us right now, you're just in time for the big conversation in regards to human trafficking in Kenya. This is an industry that continues to evolve. They say it is now a multi-billion industry. Concerns over what is the country doing to tackle this particular menace. Like I alluded to earlier on, a U.S. State Department's trafficking in person report released in 2024 classified Kenya as under tier 2. This is, of course, a category that Kenya was in a previous report, and they say they maintain that particular tier because in as much as there was progress in addressing human trafficking, there still are loopholes that the government was yet to address. Now, 2 years on, have those loopholes been addressed? They say Kenya grapples with its positioning as a source, transit, and destination hub for matters human trafficking. And this particular evening, we seek to make sense of that particular menace which continues to grow by the day. And I'm joined by 3 panelists who will help us make sense of this particular conversation. And to my immediate right is Evelyne John. A very good evening to you.
Good evening to you.
Karibu sana for making time to be with us. Of course, she is a survivor, and she'll be telling us more about what she went through, how she was trafficked, and what efforts were put in place to ensure that she was back in the country, whether she indeed got the much needed help, even after coming back into the country, as that is one of the crucial things that the government seeks to address. Now, also joining us this particular evening is Father Nicholas Macau. A very good evening to you, Father. Many thanks for making time. Okay, pretty much. Of course, Father Nicholas Macau works with the Consolata Missionaries as the Director of Peace, Justice, and Integrity of Creation in Africa. Now, also joining us this particular evening is Wakili Shalmith Gaturi Maranya. Very good evening to you, Wakili.
Good evening, Ian.
Thank you very much for making time.
Thank you.
Of course, Shalmith is a practicing advocate of the High Court of Kenya and currently serving as the Legal Officer and Program Manager at AMCA Africa Justice. Now, let's kickstart this particular conversation. And just to, make sense of everything, I want to start with you, Evelyne John. What happened? You can probably, briefly just tell us about your ordeal, how, you were lured, how you got information or wind about, was it a job opportunity? How did you see that particular advert? Did anyone approach you? What were the promises given to you? And also the realities that you faced while you were overseas.
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And you can also, of course, express yourself in the language that you're comfortable in, be it Kiswahili or English.
Asante sana. Kwa majina naitwa Evelyne John, venye umesema. Okay, nilijipata kwa hii mambo ya human trafficking 2020, ambapo nilikujiwa na rafiki ya rafiki yangu, akanielezea kama kuna kazi abroad, ambapo niliona ni vizuri niende nitafute ajira. So aliponiambia, alinichukua kwa agent ako town. Kwa hivyo yeye alikuwa broker. Nikaenda kwa agent town, nikajiandikisha hapo, nikamwambia nataka kazi. Akaniambia kazi iko na hakuna kitu utalipa. Tutakufanyia kila kitu for free. So kizungu inasema, well, the deal is too good, you have to think twice. Ambapo sikufikiria mara mbili, mimi niliamua kuenda juu nataka kazi. Yeah.
Na labda ulipewa ahadi yoyote ya kwamba ukienda kule ulikuwa uelekee ungepata kazi fulani ndio kazi ungefanya, na labda ulifika huko ulipata hali ilikuwa gani?
Okay, mimi nikitoka hapa niliambiwa vizuri naenda kufanya kazi ya nyumba. So hiyo ilikuwa kwa mind yangu naenda kufanya kazi ya nyumba. But niliambiwa ni watu wawili kwa hiyo nyumba. Nilipofika kule nilipata kitu tofauti, sikupata watu wawili. Nilipata around 30 people kwa building moja. So nilikuwa nifanyie hawa 30 people kazi na nilikuwa peke yangu. Yeah.
Ulifanya labda kazi kwa muda gani?
Kwa hiyo nyumba nilifanya kazi 2 months 2 weeks. So nikaamua nitoroke.
Kwa hizo miezi miwili labda ulilipwa?
No.
Kupata malipo?
Sikulipwa, sikukula miezi 2 na wiki 2. So nilikaa tu kama mtu sijielewi vizuri. Nikaona nguvu inaniishia, lazima nifanye kazi na aukuli. Nikaona sita manage. Nikajaribu kuambia mambo na kunirudisha embassy, wakakataa. Ikakuwa ni vita. Nilipowaambia nataka kurudi embassy, ikakuwa ni vita, wakasema wananirudisha Kenya. So nilingoja wanirudishe Kenya, wakunirudisha Kenya, wakaniambia kama nataka kurudi Kenya niwape 500,000 Kenya money ndio wanirudishe.
Sasa tu labda la mwisho, ulisema ulienda taifa gani?
Nilienda Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Ni nani alikwambia labda umpe shilingi 500 ndio wakurudishe?
Mwajiri wangu. Mwajiri. Hiyo 500,000 alipatia agent Kenya. So ni kama alininunua kutoka kwa huyo agent. So nilikuwa nifanye kazi nilipe hiyo pesa na singeweza.
Na uliweza kupata usaidizi kivipi?
Ilibidi nitoroke hiyo nyumba. So ile siku nilitoroka, mimi nilitoroka bila kujua mahali naenda, kwa sababu huko kila mahali imeandikwa na Kiarabu na nakimbia, jua inawaka. Ilibidi tu nitoroke. Nilipotoroka nikakutana na hao watu wa taxi. Tukitoka hapa huwa unavaa uniform. Hiyo uniform ni t-shirt and trouser. So nilivaa hiyo t-shirt ambapo ilikuwa na jina ya hiyo ofisi yenye ilikuwa huko.
Na sasa kwa ile harakati ya wewe kutaka kurudishwa huko nchini, ni nani uliweza labda kucontact ukapata usaidizi? Labda ulienda kwenye embassy ya Kenya kule Saudi Arabia ukapata usaidizi wa aina gani, na huo usaidizi ulikuja baada ya muda gani labda?
Okay, ni long story but nitaweka ikuwe short. Nilipotoka kule nikapata ile ofisi, niliweza kuuzwa kwingine kwa nyumba lingine, ndio ule mwajiri wangu wa kwanza apate 500,000 yake aniwachilie niende nifanye kazi kwingine. So huyo mwajiri wangu mwenye alininunua alimlipa 500,000 zake na tukaenda na yeye kwake. So kwake aliniahidi, aliniambia wako watu 6 kwake, alikuwa na watoto 4 na bibi na bwana. So nilipofika pale nilipata ni ukweli wako watu 6 kwa hiyo nyumba. Lakini nilipoingia kule niliruhusiwa kukula, kufanya kila kitu waliniruhusu kufanya. Nilikuwa naweza lala, naweza kula, naweza oga. Alafu nikakaa hapo almost 1 month, nikaona vitu zinabadilika. Nafanya kazi huku, ikifika usiku napelekwa kwingine, naenda kufanya kazi tena kwa nyumba ingine.
So ni kama ulikuwa unafanya kazi
nyumba mbili? Yeah. So nilipowauliza salary ya hiyo nyumba ingine, wakaniambia ile pesa watanipea kwa mwezi ni hiyo tu nitafanyia hizo kazi. Nikapata iko ngumu. So siku moja tu nilipomaliza tena 2 months 2 weeks kwa hiyo nyumba, huyo baba wa nyumba akabadilika. So ni yeye tu nilikuwa naweza kucommunicate na yeye juu yeye ndiye anasikia Kizungu, bibi yake haelewi na mimi sijui Kiarabu. So nilikuwa niongee na yeye aambie bibi yake venye mimi nataka. So siku moja akaniambia nataka kutuma familia yangu, bibi aende kwao na watoto, tubaki na wewe sasa ukue kama mke wangu. Ambapo nikamwambia hiyo haikunileta huku kabisa. Yeah. Nilipomwambia hivyo, yeye sasa alikuwa anafanya kwa Royal Family. Watu wote wa serikali huko wanaitwa Royal Family. So yeye alikuwa anafanya, yeye alikuwa Royal Family. So kwa hiyo nyumba yake kuna bunduki. Wote wako na bunduki. So wakati alituma bibi yake hiyo siku tukabaki wawili. Mimi nilibaki tu na yeye, lakini nikamwambia hiyo labda siku ingine, si leo. Akaniambia kama ni siku ingine uniambie ni siku gani. Nikamwahidi kesho. So ilipofika hiyo kesho alitumana driver nikujie anipeleke mahali bibi yake alienda. So nikaenda hiyo siku nikijua kwa kichwa kesho tena anawatuma nibaki hapa nikue kama bibi. So ilipofika hiyo kesho asubuhi nilikuwa na wasiwasi juu kuna siku nakumbuka alinishikia hiyo gani yake, nikanyenyekea tu kwa sababu huko si kwetu. So nikaona na nimemwahidi ni kesho, wakati nitamkataza itakuwa ni vita. So venye niliona tulitoka kwa kina bibi yake ilikuwa around 5 asubuhi. Nilikuwa kwa akili yangu nilikuwa na prepare venye nitatoroka kutoka hapo. Juu kama ningekaa hapo alafu akuja anipate hiyo siku, unajua bibi yake atajua yeye ndio mwenye makosa itakuwa ni mimi nimeenda kwa bwana yake. So ata understand. Nikaona hapa nitauliwa, inabidi nitoroke tena.
So hatimaye uliweza kutoroka?
Niliweza kutoroka.
Ulitorokea sasa ukapeleka kena nyumba nyingine ama labda unaenda?
No, wakati nilitoroka hapo nikarudi tena kwa ofisi. Kwa hiyo ofisi yenye iko Saudi Arabia. So niliporudi kwa ofisi hapo ndio mateso ilianza tena. Yeah.
Labda tu kabla utuelezee mateso ambayo ulipitia tena kwa hiyo ofisi, let me come to you, Father. Hearing what Evelyne went through even before she tells us more about what happened in the office in Saudi, this seems to be the order of the day for many Kenyans who are in more so Gulf countries, because the Gulf countries, is the perceived major destination for Kenyans who are trafficked. Maybe as the church, or as maybe even community-based organizations, how often do you get such cases? And maybe from where you sit, what could be the root cause? We do know that there's the issue of employment here in the country, and many Kenyans want to seek alternative options or jobs outside the country. But other than that, are there cases that maybe like for Evelyne John's case, they get trafficked unknowingly, by those who pretend that they're getting jobs for them, but in real sense, it ends up rather being human trafficking? How often do you deal with these cases, or do you get these cases rather?
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you, Evelyne, for your case and masaibu aliyompata. Ni sitasema ni ya kawaida kwamba litendeke, lakini is common. Kama kanisa, kama vikundi vya jamii, we receive these cases quite often. Listen to our case is like so many other cases I've listened, kind of the same patterns, the same structure, and we have come to look at it and believe it is true, it's happening to that way. And looking at it, and these last 5 years, it has actually doubled more than decreased. And I think it's also looking at the governance issues of our country, whereby law is now kind of implemented selectively. and timing to particular situation or instance. And as you have intuited already, yeah, there is kind of a perceived will, consent of the person. But when you look at it, and for us as a religious organization and also civil society organization, we have formed a network so that apart from just defending them, to understand what is actually happening. And so we have reached a moment to say it's not really consent. Even when the person has been able to sign, go through particular documentation, we see there are other forces behind it that disqualifies that consent, that free will. These consents, these forces are like to be cheated, but also you find that you are living in a situation that is wanting, a situation of poverty, a situation of within the country, whereby there is no hope, and these confusions of, there is an education system that is promising these, and eventually people are not seeing, and even the political statement that we are seeing, it is making people lose hope. Young people lose hope, and they are kind of perceiving maybe it is better outside there. So this is one of also a factor or a key indicator that is making them feel I want to go. But actually they are forced by circumstances to go. It's not that they are doing it on their own free will. I am working also with the partnership of an organization like NAUSOM, whereby it's not only church, we have even civil society. Civil society where we have also lawyers, we have people of different professions, so that it's not only looking at our side as a church for the defense, but opening up to the society, researches. And we are seeing this trend that is happening that they are going outside. It is not seemingly stopping, it's actually increasing. And a lot of it is what she has already said, a lot of deception, and people who are doing it kind of go scot-free. So if, as you had already said earlier, Kenya is always, for the last three times, been in tier 2. One of the key indicators to make Kenya remain in the same is we don't have a lot of clear prosecution cases that somebody has been held accountable. We have not seen, Kenya signing with the government on what you call short terms for our young people who go there, so that they are protected on this particular point of time. Not that, we belong to the members who have signed the protocols, but this short term, because people are going there for contracts of 3 years and less. And then also defense for their children who have gone there. We have seen other countries like Asian countries. They are not taken the same as people from Africa, let's say from Kenya, from South America. Even though they are there on the same terms like Kenya, but we see their nationals have got other, perhaps better conditions offered, because their government negotiates forcefully. They don't just let them go. And so I think it's a trend. What she has said is happening, is sympathetic, is sad, but we still believe there must be somebody through our ministries, through our government, that can stand. And is not standing as a Kenya, but because he is the voice of his citizen.
Fair enough. Wakili, let me come to you. When that report was released by the U.S. State Department of State, in terms of trafficking reporting persons, they said the Kenyan government does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. Despite the fact that we've made a bit of progress, Kenya still does not meet the minimum standards. Now, it is around 16 years since that is the Counter-Trafficking Act of 2010 was enforced. We still are seeing very low cases of prosecutions and convictions. Why is that the case? Where exactly is the loophole here?
So to begin with, I'll say Kenya, we don't have a problem of policies or a problem of having lacking the proper legal frameworks. Yeah, we have very good laws. We have very good policies. The problem comes with the implementation. To start with, as we mentioned, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act is very clear, has a very good definition of what amounts to trafficking. It involves recruitment, transport, transfer, harboring of a person for purposes of exploitation through different means. That can be threat, can be deception, can be coercion, or can be even by giving someone financial benefit. But a lot of times you find the people who are used through all this chain do not always get prosecuted. The same act has very good provisions in terms of different criminal offenses that arise throughout the trafficking chain. So it should start with, for instance, in her case, recruitment with the agent. The law is very clear on agent. The Labor Institutions Act has a provision that requires that all recruitment agents to be registered with the National Employment Authority. A lot of times, those agents are not registered. So when they are not registered, but they are operating, and sometimes someone knows they are operating because, again, going to the issue of these people are traveling outside the country, someone is issuing them with documentation. In that report that you are referring to, you'll note that last year, well, we made a lot of progress whereby we had like 44 investigations, 42 prosecutions. No single government official was prosecuted for having supported the trafficking in persons in the country. Yet a lot of people are trafficked either outside the country or within the country, issued documentation. There's someone who is in charge of these porous borders. There's someone who is stamping this documentation, but no one is being prosecuted. The other thing, now the issue of awareness of the law. Because also you see, even if the law is there, if the people themselves, if the citizens are not aware of the law, then it does not really become of much use to them. For instance, the Employment Act, the general regulations, state very clearly for any person who leaves the country on an employment contract to go work in another country, such a foreign contract must be attested by a labor officer. But oftentimes, people go. First of all, the employees who are getting into these contracts are not even aware that government is supposed to stamp them. They get confused. They don't read the contract. A lot of times, some of them are issued the contract where they're already on the plane. What can you do when you're already on the plane? So the biggest issue that you're facing is implementation. And if to add, if we were to say, of course, the law is not perfect. There are some few loopholes here and there. For instance, from the report you are referring to, you'll see a major contention that has been every single year has been the fact that that act provides for criminal offenses whereby there is a punishment of imprisonment, but it says and or a particular fine. So perhaps for instance, the criminal offense of trafficking a person has an imprisonment punishment of 30 years and or a fine of 30 million. So there has been an argument in the, especially in the civil society space in regards to if there is an option of a fine, that gives a very big discretion for the magistrate or for the high court judges determining this matter to be able to just issue a fine. However, over time, when you have been seeing the precedents that have been there, work has been going on, just that we are moving slowly. For instance, right now we have 2 cases of people who have been convicted for trafficking persons for purposes of first begging. I know that's something Nairobians, we know a lot of people who have been trafficked from Tanzania to come to Nairobi and they are forced in the streets to beg. You give them money, thinking you're assisted, but at the end of the day, you're just funding someone else's business. True. On the other hand, the other place that you have been making a lot of progress has been the issue of prosecution of recruitment agents and also of the victims being supported to sue the recruitment agents. We have 2 recent cases. A very recent one where a victim who was trafficked by a recruitment agent to Saudi Arabia and lied to that she was going to do cashier work but ended up doing domestic work, was awarded some very good compensation. Another similar case was in 2024 whereby someone who was had been lied to was going to Thailand but ended up being trafficked to Myanmar was also given compensation. However, as I conclude, while we have all these progresses, the biggest thing, I know a lot of times when we talk about trafficking, let me start with trafficking is not only a cross-border issue or a cross-border transaction. It also happens within the borders. But I know a lot what we are aware of is what is cross-border. But now, of course, with the cross-border aspect, we have one very, very big challenge, the transnational nature of it. Because that means our government is able to prosecute, has powers, has all the powers to prosecute someone who is within the country. Mm-hmm. The moment they are not within the country, now it becomes a very big problem. Because when you look at Evelyne's case, So the recruitment agent who is here can be prosecuted. But what about the one who is operating in Saudi Arabia? How do we get them here? Does our country have a bilateral agreement with this country, giving the country the obligation to extradite that person to our country for prosecution? Or does this person get prosecuted in that other country? So that's where now things start getting lost.
That's where I was coming, Wakili, because we do have, bilateral agreements with almost all of the Gulf countries. But do these agreements actually protect Kenyans who are there, or is it just, paperwork?
The thing, as I've previously mentioned, the law, if it is there but there's no enforcement, it becomes very difficult. It's just now a piece of paper. At least you have seen recently, I think it's this month, we have the government who has entered another bilateral agreement for certain employment terms. But then now you see, ideally, how that could start even being implemented would be from the point of Kenya, whereby someone is signing a foreign contract to go work in the Gulf country. When that labor officer is attesting it, must look at these terms adhering to a bilateral agreement. But then that doesn't happen in the first place. So already it is lost at the first place. Then it moves ahead to this other point. And then you see, when you look at transactions between government, there's a lot of diplomacy. It's not the same, there's a lot of diplomacy. So if this other government is not doing the extradition, you can see, for instance, the case of the British soldier. You have seen how that conversation has gone in terms of, can this person be extradited to the country to be prosecuted here? We have not had such cases. But however, I'll however give a disclaimer that we have had foreigners who are prosecuted in the country. But most of the time it has been those who have been arrested while they're still in the country. Okay. Those who have committed the offense committed the offense in the country and have been arrested in the country. It becomes a little bit more difficult when someone now, the offense has been committed against a Kenyan citizen, or it's connected to another offense committed here in this country, and now that person is in that other country. Now that has been, we have not really seen much progress there. Okay,
Evelyne, labda nikuje kwako. Uliporejea labda, unasema uliteswa kule kwa ufupi tu, labda ni mateso yapi ulipitia kule, na labda ulivorejea huku nchini, uliweza kupata usaidizi yoyote kutoka labda kwa embassy ama serikali, ama uliweza kurejelea vipi maisha yako kama kuweza kujiinua kutoka chini tena?
Okay, pale kwa ofisi nilijaribu kureach, hata hiyo wakati I think alikuwa Sonko na Uhuru. Nilijaribu kureach, nilikuwa naona kama Uhuru anasaidia watu, hata Sonko alikuwa anasaidia watu kutoa huko, lakini si kupata usaidizi yeyote. Nilijaribu kutafuta juu na chini, watu wangu walienda mpaka Ministry of Labor, hawakupata usaidizi. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, hawakupata usaidizi yeyote. So ilibidi, kulikuwa na rafiki. Mateso ile nilikuwa napitia pale, hata nilikuwa poisoned nikiwa hapo kwa ofisi, ndio wafunike zile evidence. Kuna vitu nilikuwa naona mingi sana. So nilikuwa wakati waligundua naweza toa siri hiyo nje yenye nilikuwa naona kwa hiyo ofisi, ilibidi wani poison. Wakati walini poison, nilipata kama wakubwa wa embassy walikuwa wanatembea wakiangalia hiyo environment venye inakaa kama iko congested na wasichana. So wakati walikuja, huyo mwenye ofisi alisema jambo moja kwa wenzangu, msiseme kama kuna mtu mgonjwa humu ndani, tokeni nje, lakini mtu asiende akaongelele kuna mtu hapa ndani. So walipoenda nje, kulikuwa na msichana mmoja alikuwa Mcoast. Ndio alisema kuna mwenzetu huku ndani anaumia, atolewe nje. So hao akauliza kuna mwingine amebaki? Huyo mtu akasisitiza sana akisema hakuna. Msichana akasema kunayo. So ilibidi waingie ndani na force wanitoe nje. Kunitoa nje wakanipeleka hospitali, nilikuwa poisoned, wakanirudisha hapo tu bado. Waliponirudisha hapo, bado mateso haikukomea hapo. Nilikuwa natupwa kwa desert. Saa yoyote anafikiria nataka kunipeleka nje, anasema wewe nakumalizia huku na watu wako wasijue uko wapi. So alikuwa ananitupa, venye nilikuelezea huko sijui chochote, huwezi soma pale ni wapi. So nikatembea, ilikuwa 5 hours kwa desert. Nikitembea, natafuta ni wapi nitafikia na sioni nyumba na sioni kitu yoyote. So nilitembea 5 good hours.
Usiku na mchana, 5 hours, okay.
5 hours. Nikapata, I think ilikuwa kama police station. Nikapata Wahindi hapo wamesimama ni kama watchman. Wakaniuliza shida iko wapi, nikajaribu kuelezea. Wakaniuliza unajua hiyo ofisi imezoea inaletanga wasichana huku wakitupwa. So nikawaambia niko na t-shirt inaweza onyesha hiyo ofisi. Nilipowaonyesha wakapiga namba ilikuwa hapo kwa t-shirt. Walipopigiwa simu au waliwaambiwa sisi ni polisi. So walifanya haraka kunikujia kutoka hapo. Waliposikia ni polisi. Wakati walinikujia walinipeleka tena kule wakaniuza huku kunaitwa aje?
Ni sawa, tunaweza kutuelezea.
Kuna mahali waliniuza tena Kuwait. Walinipeleka Kuwait. So hiyo Kuwait nilipelekwa, sina passport, sina chochote, lakini nimejikuta niko Kuwait. So maisha ikakuwa ngumu nikiwa Kuwait, nashindwa nitarudi aje. Niko kwa nyumba ya mtu. Ilibidi nigome. Ni akili tu nilikuwa natumia. Sasa nasema liwe liwalo hata kama nitakufa. Bora ijulikane contract yangu inasoma Riyadh. Haisomi Kuwait. So nitafanya juu chini nirudishwe Riyadh. Niligoma kufanya kazi, nikatolewa Kuwait, nikarudishwa Riyadh. Niliporudishwa Riyadh tena kwa hiyo ofisi, wakanitupa. So nikaanza hii matembezi ya kwenda embassy. Embassy nilienda several times. Huyo mtu akiniambia siwezi kukusaidia, na Kenya ilikuwa inaniuma zaidi ni Mkenya mwenzako na tena ni kabila yako.
Lakini anakuambia hawezi kusaidia.
Anakuambia ulikuja huku kufanya kazi, kwani mtu akilala na wewe siku moja utakufa. Enda ukalale na Waarabu upate pesa. Hivyo ndio wasichana wanafanya huku. Nikapata hard time.
Na sasa labda tu kwa sababu ya muda, uliweza kurudi aje nchini? Baada ya muda gani labda, na nani aliweza kusaidia kurudi nchini?
Bado kulikuwa na rafiki mwenye alikuwa ananijua. So alikuwa anasikia napitia mateso. Akasema yeye anajua watu wenye wanaweza nisaidia. Sasa aliniconnect na watu wa Heart Kenya. Heart Kenya tukaongea tena, nilikaa huko. Imagine nimekaa Saudi Arabia 2 years bila kuenda kazi. Hizo kazi nilifanya tuseme ni 5 months. So Heart Kenya tuliongea juu vitu zilikuwa ni kama ilikuwa inaenda slow juu ya corona. Vitu zilikuwa zinaenda slow. So wananiambia utakuja Kenya, kumbe kuna venye walistaki hawa boss wangu. So lazima nifanye kesi na wao. Kesi ishe ndio nikuje wapi? Kenya. Ilibidi nimalize hiyo 2 years tuseme kama naenda kotini. Nikienda kesi na wao. Na Kenya ilikuwa inanishtua, ilikuwa ni hii kesi mimi sielewi Kiarabu. Lakini nafanya na Waarabu. But nashukuru sana waliniwekea lawyer huko. Na lawyer alinipea nguvu, alikuwa ananiambia Evelyne tu siku moja kesi yako itashinda. Na hiyo nini nasema, kesi ikikushinda Saudi Arabia unakuwa jailed 15 years ukiwa huko. So nilikuwa na uoga mingi juu hata wakistaki mimi sikuwa najua wamestakiwa. So nilikuwa naenda tu, ni ile wewe unajipata pale, ushajipata kwa hiyo situation lazima uende. Nilikuwa naenda hivyo. So tuna kesi. Siku moja nikastukia tu kesi imeshinda. Nafaa kukuja Kenya. Sasa hiyo nafaa kukuja Kenya, nilinyang'anywa passport yangu venye walichukua nikitoka Kenya, sikuwahi iona na macho.
Mwajiri wako wa kwanza ndiye alichukua?
Ni yeye alichukua na ikapotea hivyo.
Labda sasa, for the record, the organization she's talking about is, they are one for the awareness against human trafficking. But labda uliporejea nchini, ulipata usaidizi kutoka kwa, wachana na organization ambayo ilikusaidia, kutoka kwa serikali labda, na huyo agenti wa hapa nchini ambaye alikupeleka kule. Una taarifa kuhusiana na kama bado anaendelea na shughuli yake hii leo ama hatua ilichukuliwa dhidi yake?
Okay, tukiongea kuhusu agent, sijawahi jua kama ofisi yake inaendelea kufanya kazi ama bado ilifungwa. But kitu najua, nilipofika Kenya, hakuna mtu yeyote aliniangalia kama Mkenya kutoka kwa serikali. Hakuna mtu yeyote alikuja hata kunitembelea. Juu wakati nilifika Kenya sikukuwa hata na makao kwa kuishi. Na watu wetu wote walinitoroka wakisema nimeenda kutafuta pesa, niko na pesa, nimewanyima. So mimi nilipokuja Kenya nilikuwa Evelyne venye unaniona, sina makao, watu wetu wamenitoroka. Hakuna mtu yeyote aliingilia kati kutoka kwa serikali.
So uliwezaje kupata usaidizi, labda mahali pa kukaa, malazi, chakula?
Okay, nikiongea ni hao watu wa Hat Kenya. Nilipofika Kenya hivi nilienda nikawaelezea venye kuko watoto niko nao 4 na hao watoto wote hawakukuwa na makao. Okay. Wakati nilikuwa nimeenda kule nilijua nitawalipia rent. So wakati vitu zilienda wrong, walienda kuishi na shemeji yangu mahali. So huyo shemeji yangu pia alikuwa anaugua kansa. Sasa ilikuwa ngumu mimi kukaa kwake, ana bibi, watoto wangu wako hapo 4, niko na wa high school, bado niko nao wengine hawana hata manguo. Nilipata hawana hata manguo. So Hat Kenya ilikuwa inanisaidia, walileta manguo, wakanitafutia nyumba, wakanilipia nyumba. Yaani walinisaidia pakubwa, sababu niliporejea hapa Kenya hata nilikuja kama siko hivi venye mnaniona leo. Nilikuwa kama nikuchanganyikiwa, kukua mwenda wazimu.
Kama dhofika kiafya?
Yeah, nilidhofika sana, nilikuwa kama mwenda wazimu. Yaani mwili yote unauma kila mahali. Kile ufikiri, nilikuwa tu hapo. So ilibidi wakuje waniwekee watu wa therapy. Na mnajua venye inakuanga expensive. Waliweza kunilipia hizo nini zote na nikaenda hizo session zao zote. So walipoona ni kama narudi normal. Ujue hii wakati niko mgonjwa hao wananilipia rent kila mwezi, wanaleta chakula kila mwezi, na wakasomesha kijana wangu kutoka form 1 mpaka form 4. Wakapeleka, nilikuwa na mapacha, waliwapeleka shule, hawakuwa shule, lakini waliweza kuwapeleka shule. Wakaenda hii PP1 mpaka PP2. Waliwachia hapo, nadhani kuna watu wengi wanasaidia. So saa zingine inabidi wakati yako wasaidie wengine pia. But na shukuru walinisaidia venye ilikuwa inafaa.
Sawa. Pole sana kwa ulioyapitia. Father, if I may come to you now, what role should, not only churches, but also, schools, community leaders play in, helping survivors of, human trafficking like her? And even as you talk to us, about that, what does proper reintegration, look like? Because she didn't have a place to stay, she didn't have food. So what does a successful reintegration into the community look like for victims of or survivors of, human trafficking?
Yeah, thank you. And Pole, for all that went through. I know I've used this word Pole so many, and always I say Pole is new to everyone I meet of this. And we say she's lucky to have gotten to this group. Just before I comment on that, you had asked Wakili about the government with the bilateral agreement with other governments.
Sure.
Which is true. We have those bilateral agreements. But from where I sit and from the experience we see is maybe the government lacks that goodwill to enforce it. Because at the end of it, even if we say it's a responsibility for all, which is true, and we are committed to that as a church, each one has a role to play. But there is one who has the highest responsibility over this, the state, over our children. Looking at us saying that I came back, none of that came in, this bilateral agreement is not only when our people are outside there. It must start from here. Safe travel systems, She was talking about documentation, and I think that is key. One of our experiences is also we have discovered these people are given contracts in foreign language. And when you push to understand, you are given another paper, which is maybe in English, but when you come to sign, you sign in that foreign language, Arabic for this matter. How do you expect that person, even if he goes outside there and finds the correct translation? And since there is no goodwill, you'll find there are some exchange of things here. So you went there as a nurse or as a teacher or as a domestic worker, but when you arrive there, you become a sex worker. You become this, you become that. That's clearly coming from her. But nevertheless, to go back to what you're asking, the church and the civil society, we are pushing to come together so that we can become the alternative voice for our young people we meet in churches. They're our brothers, they're our sisters. We have different organizations, and particularly in this week, we are trying to come together to discover each other. What can you do so that there is, collaboration? Particularly, I'm working with the Talitha Kumi International. This is Catholic Religious Against Human Trafficking. We have also St. Marta Group. We have NowSom, that is a network for so many. Now there is Art Kenya. And in this, there are many. We are not just, it's not one organization, there are so many others. And as we focus on the day tomorrow, I think one of those key things is mental health. And mental health covers everything. So that, as she has said, how is she going to be received? The reintegration here is about preparing that person who has come back with all baggage or baggage, if you can call it, but also the recipients, those who are receiving those who are receiving them.
Okay.
As she has said, the family are expecting a lot. You went to work. What have you brought back? Now you have become another extra burden because we're having this. And cases like when you say, I have children. Maybe the parents were expecting, we keep your children, we care for them until you come. Now when you come, we are expecting you, umekuja na ndo, ziko wapi? And that also becomes for them another problem. Isolation, fear. So, and mental health covers not only counseling. For our understanding as a church, we are saying part of the mental health is also economic empowerment. And for us, these things go together. What is making these people asking for opportunity outside or seeking for opportunity outside is because the economic empowerment or economic situation where they are living is not okay. They're not just going there for fun. They want to improve their own life. They want to improve their family.
Sure.
They want to eradicate poverty from their area, from their home. So that's what is causing them to go. Now, if they come in such a situation like Evelyne here, and they have any economic support, easily they will stand in the same problem. Either they will go back if they get another opportunity, because they have come and there's nothing. And, the traffickers, they will use the same advantage. You see, it will not be the same like the other time. This will be going to be different. I'm not going to take you to the same, I'm gotten a new person who is better. I am going to take you to another town, not this town. And since I'm in need, easily I'll be lured and cheated, and I accept. Number two, on the economic aspect of it is also, we are looking at when that person comes and is doing nothing, is not fulfilled. Number one is the fear of entering to drugs in order to compensate, to cover up, to enter into criminal activities, to cover up, to be busy, not to be found, to say I'm doing something. And so many of those other things. So as a church, our response, we are saying that as much as we want the government to do the highest contribution from the resources we get, is to give them some economic activities, biasharas, or skills and trainings, so that they can even start their own. They can, have a hope in their life. They can be resilient in, all they face. They can be accepted by the others. One of the problems of isolation is those who are expecting you to come with money and you have to come without money. What do? They laugh at you, they call you names, and all that. And we know our society, when it comes to this, we are not polite to each other. So this is one of the things as a church we are trying to say as part of the integration, to make them go through, now for us we are calling a spiritual discernment, not alone, but with the community around them, with the families around them, and with the churches.
Pretty much. Shokili, you talked about the prosecution of agents, and Evelyne said she is not sure whether the agent is still, recruiting more people, trafficking them abroad or not. And that is not the first time. I mean, even when there were concerns about Kenyans who were trafficked to be on the front line in the war between Russia and Ukraine, there were concerns about the agents, and the families are complaining that they've reported the agents, but nothing is happening. So how do we address that from a legal standpoint?
Okay, so where do we begin with that? One, I will say, I know when I say it, it might seem like I'm just saying it because I'm a lawyer, but the justice system works. I know sometimes we have a very difficult time with it because we say the wheels of justice are slow. But we start with, when you have reported like that and there is no progress, that's where organizations like Camca Africa come in. We cannot fight this bull of trafficking alone. We have to come together. That's why where networks like Nahusom, where there are other organizations that provide free legal aid services come in. I know for one, like for us, there's a case we have handled where we have had someone who, an agent who detained identity documents and refused to give them back on the basis that you have refused because the girl changed her mind about going to the Gulf country. And actually, no, she did not change her mind. COVID happened and the borders were closed. So the agent was saying, I gave you this, I gave you, I paid for your medical care, I paid for your contract, so you have to pay for this. And we had to take them to court. So when we come together, we can be able to tackle this. The other way, there are two ways to hold agents accountable. There is criminal liability and there is civil liability. And there's nothing that stopped you from having both of them going together simultaneously in court. So like the two cases that I've mentioned previously, they are very landmark cases because those came out of constitutional petitions. So that's why I'm saying it's important that to bring organizations like Camca Africa and other people who provide legal aid services, even like Heart Kenya, to these kind of cases. Because if the criminal process is not working, then first, there's a way to hold the people who are responsible for the criminal process to account as to why are they not acting. And then number two, there's the constitutional petition. With the constitution we have right now, anyone has a right to bring a constitutional petition alleging that their fundamental rights or freedoms have been violated. That can be a way for victims. And finally, it is important now also for us to support survivors, to be able to believe in and to go through the justice process. I know a lot of times people lose hope on it because now you have gone to the police station, you have not understood what you're being told, you're not understanding, sometimes the case has started, you're being told that the mention was there today, the magistrate was not sitting. So you don't understand, you feel like your case is dragging so long, like now I know the court is going on vacation. So you hear the court is going on vacation, you're given a date in December. So you find, I know a lot of times, and I do not bring them, survivors lose hope and then they stop following up. Remember, for the criminal justice system, it cannot move without the complainant. So if the complainant starts failing attending court, the prosecutor has no option. Because now they do not have a witness. The case is bad, they do not have a witness. So also the other thing is for us to support survivors, to continue believing and to also to be able to navigate the access to justice process entirely until justice is served.
That is one way to look at it. What about, probably legal protections being offered to, survivors who've come out or come forward to say this and this happened, in terms of protecting them from these rogue agencies who might go after them in terms of just ensuring they're safe, because some of them might decide to disappear, not continue the case because they're facing threats left, right, and center from the agents. So is there like a legal protection that ensures that those who come out or come forward can be protected from any threat or harm from these rogue agents?
That's a very good question, actually. We have actually handled such a case. First of all, this country has a witness protection agency. And the witness protection agency, what it does, once a victim or a survivor is threatened or there's a likelihood of them being threatened, then you can apply. We have applied previously to have a trafficking victim be protected by a witness protection agency because the perpetrator was constantly threatening them and their family. The other way, the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act has a provision whereby it states it holds the government officials, even the private individuals dealing with such cases to account, to the sense that they are data protection. There's certain data they are not, they are obligated not to release such data without the consent, which puts the victim of trafficking at risk. So already there are those two protection mechanisms which you have actually seen to be working.
Let me come back to you, Evelyne. Wewe saizi ukiketi, kwa sababu ulipitia masaibu wakati huo, ukuweza kupata usaidizi kutoka kwa serikali wakati huo. Hiyo ni serikali ambayo ilipita. Lakini labda kuna tu Wakenya ambao bado wanapitia visa sawia hivi sasa. Kwa sababu wewe ni mmoja ambao umepitia zile masaibu au mateso kule ughaibuni na ukarejea nchini, ukaweza pia kupitia wakati mgumu huko nchini. Ni masuala yepi ambayo labda ungetaka serikali iweze kuzingatia kwa kina zaidi kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya ambao wanaanza kutafuta ajira kule nje, kutafuta maisha, kutafuta fedha za kuweza kumudu tu maisha za jamaa zao hapa nchini, hawezi kupitia zile majanga ambayo walipitia?
Okay, kitu naweza ambia serikali, kitu ya kwanza chenye inafanya tunapitia ugumu ni kitu moja. Kwa hizi agent ni mingi hazijakuwa registered. So na bado wanafanya kazi. Kenya kuna corruption. Corruption ni mingi. Kama inaweza maliza hiyo corruption kwa hiyo pande, sababu wanafanya kazi hawajakuwa registered. Saa zile wamepeleka watu huko, umepata shida, atachukua simu yako atukimpigia. Hakuna kitu yote anaweza kukusaidia nayo huyu agent. Na bado anaendelea na hii kazi. Imagine tuseme watu 10 wako huko, wamepitia mkono ya mtu mmoja na wote wako kwa shida. Na huyu mtu bado anaendelea kuchukua watu akipeleka. So mahali waangalie sana ni hapa kwa kukuwa registered. Alafu kitu ya pili, huko mahali Saudi Arabia wawekee wasichana kitu kama safe house. So kwa sababu hakuna safe house, hata ukitoroka utazunguka tu, itabidi urudi pale unapata shida sababu hakuna safe house ya wasichana. Alafu kitu ingine wazingatie, waangalie pia sisi ni binadamu, hatuendi kule kwa kupenda kwetu. Tukirudi Kenya, umerudi umeumia, umeteseka huko, angalau watuwekee kitu ukifika hapa Kenya, at least hata kama anaweza wasichana wafunguliwe mabiashara. Ni uchungu ukiona wenzetu wanaenda huko kila siku, wakirudi wengine wanarudi kama wamekufa. Hakuna kitu, umekufa na umewacha familia yako nyuma, maybe umewacha watoto wadogo, hakuna mtu anaangalia wacha tusomeshe hawa. Hakuna. So tunaweza waambia pia waangalie hiyo pande. Mtu labda umeenda huko ukarudi kama we ni maiti, waangalie watoto watasoma vipi. Hiyo tu.
So labda kabla nizungumze na Father, kwa wale vijana ama Wakenya wenzako ambao labda wanatafuta nafasi za kuelekea ughaibuni kwenye mitandao ama wapi, nini labda ungewaambia waweze kutilia manani zaidi, hata kama ni kwa hizi job advertisements, nini ambayo labda wanaweza angalia useme hii hapana, hii ni kama si genuine?
Okay, kitu ya kwanza naweza ambia vijana wale wanatafuta ajira nje, wakuwe makini kwa sababu hawa ni watapeli. Mama yako atauza shamba aseme umeenda kufanya kazi ya walimu, wewe uko serious utaenda hiyo kazi, ukifika huko hakuna hiyo kazi ya walimu, maybe umewekwa kwa ofisi mahali ni kama mfungwa, umekaa tu hakuna kazi unafanya. Unaona? Na wewe ulienda kama kufanya kazi ya walimu labda. Ama labda umedanganywa unaenda kufanya kazi ya hoteli, kama kuna msichana alidanganywa alijipata anaosha nyoka. So hizi vitu mingi waangalie. Saa zile mtu anakuambia kitu, ndio maana nilisema when the deal is too good, think twice. Fikiria mara mbili. Hii pesa yenye naenda kulipwa huku nimefanyia huyu mtu kazi gani ndiye nilipe hii pesa yote, ambapo umeahidiwa hiyo pesa na utaenda kuipata. Uangalie vitu mingi kabla utoke hapa, angalia hii salary umefanyia kazi gani ndio ulipwe, na huyu mtu ako genuine. Sasa hapo ndio unaangalia pale kwa NEA kama wameregister. Ukijua hii kitu imeregister, ujue hata wengine wameregister na bado hizo kazi zao haziko genuine. Unafika huku unapata hiyo kazi si genuine na ameregister. Already ushafika, already uko kwa shida. So waangalie vitu mingi kabla mtu atoke. Angalia ni nani ananiambia hii kitu, kwa sababu hawa brokers wanakuja pia wao wanalipwa. Ni broker amekwambia wewe unaenda kwa, anakupeleka kwa mtu mwingine. Kama mimi nilipitia mkono ya watu wengi sana. Nilipitia kwa broker, nikapitia hiyo agent yenye ilinipeleka ilikuwa inaitwa Airman. Nikatoka Airman, nilijipata kwa ingine Lipasama. So usazili unajipata kwa shida, uko like nimekuja na agency gani, ni Lipasama ama ni Airman? So mimi nilijua niliongea na mtu wa Airman. Yeye ndio nilikuwa namsumbua na simu. Angalia documents zako zimeandikwa na lugha gani, na usome hii document, uelewe contract yangu ni ya miaka 2, salary yangu ni 9 real, hii 9 real ni how much into Kenya money.
So, shukran. Further,
something before you ask questions about what she's saying, because it's key here what she's explaining, and that's also as a civil society and faith-based, we are trying to push for understanding. These agents, these brokers are not existing out of space. They are within a space. And these spaces, we have controllers, government. And if like us in the civil society, in the church faith-based, we are aware, so that it does not have to reach that aspect of an agent, a broker, is able to scam, to trap, without somebody intervening. But the particular aspect of, if they are making these contracts, and these contracts are, let's say 3 years, but this person has been given a contract saying the salary is this. Is the government having any mechanism to counter-check that? It has, definitely. Now, as Wakili said, and I believe fully with that, because I've gone to office, I've checked, I've confirmed, if you ask that, the government, we have policies, we have even, regulations, we have these. You ask, then you should have done this. But now who is supposed to defend the people from being conned, from being trapped, from these scams? It goes back again, it goes to the state. And so we have offices, we have got the government with its arms, but they are not acting. That's actually what we are trying to say. And if actually government comes on top of this, some of these scams, what she has said, they are not registered. And it's true, there are many who are posting like they are registered, but they are not registered. They give you fake registration codes, names, spaces. When you go there, they are not. And I believe the government arm that is concerned has been reported to. And I think this calls, as she says, a lot of transparency so that the government feels that we are defending our own. They are not like just Kenyans people, they are our own.
But look at, even as you address that, because she raised an issue of the company is registered here, but the job that they're offering you abroad is non-existent.
Is non-existent.
So we're focusing so much on also ensuring that these companies are registered, but nobody's following up on, is the job being offered to this Kenyan out there really there, or is it non-existent? And
this is not the need of the bilateral agreements. So that our government here should counter-check from the government there, in Yemen, in Saudi, in Lebanon. This organization in Kenya is registered to be offering this kind of job. Is it actually there? So that I don't go and arrive there and I find, no, this is not there, it's not a job. And from the country where I've come from, it is there. So it is the control of the government to ensure through a bilateral agreement to cheat that Kenyan who goes there and find it's not true, actually are cheating the government. And we have already an agreement. And that agreement must also be in good faith and in transparent accountability. But I was raising another issue.
Okay.
Where is, we saw at one moment, through the government acting as agent to give work to our young men to other countries. I think it's almost a year after that. I mean, I was expecting a continuous report that out of 1,000 that went, 700 have been already sorted out. We are still finding for the others. And this is happening so that it can counteract these false agents, these pretenders. But now, if we have never gotten anything, and there are already stories in the media that it became a scam. Now, are we thinking that our government has also been scammed equally as the other ordinary person is? And they went to a particular country. And that country, there must have been an agreement. We know at twice or thrice, minister went to visit the CS. So these are kind of the transparent actions that we are seeking so that it can now counteract any individual agent, any individual company that is ruining and cheating our people around. But as Wakili said, the law is there. We just need people who are willing to implement in the government. Lastly, one more thing about it.
Briefly.
Very briefly, this one. We have also come to understand in those embassies, consuls of Kenya, we have foreigners who do not speak Swahili or English working in those places. How are they going to help our people when they go there to seek for help? It becomes complicated and difficult. So as Evelyne says, this is actually an addition. No, when they are there because they wanatafuta ajira, kuwe na mtu ambao anawaelekeza katika lugha na njia ambao wanaweza kuelewa na kufahamu to make a choice.
Okay, Wakili, listening to Evelyne, she talked about the help that the government can offer to survivors of, human trafficking. One of the things that, one of the recommendations from that particular report that I was alluding to was, one, to significantly increase availability of short-term and long-term help for victims and also migrant workers returning from abroad. Now, there was also the recommendation of amending anti-trafficking laws to remove sentencing provisions that allow fines in lieu of imprisonment for sex trafficking offenses. One big concern that was also there is that, Kenya had not done implemented one of the recommendations or worked on it, and that is, developing a centralized database on trafficking claims, which would, in turn help in ensuring that these cases are dealt with once and for all. So how can the government, how can, not only churches, also, those in the legal space, but also civil society organizations come together, work together, and even push the government or work with the government to ensure that all these recommendations are adhered to, the proposals are implemented to tackle these issues? Because if they go at a slow pace, then the more we drag it, the more, or the higher the number of Kenyans who continue to suffer in the hands of, foreigners or in foreign overseas, rather.
All right, so one major way of us, of different stakeholders holding the government accountable is public interest litigation. That is bringing the cases in court under Article 22, particularly where it's clear that, where it's very clear that the lack of action is due to government inaction. For instance, going back to what you're saying, for instance, we keep saying before you become, you work with any recruitment agent, before you agree for them to take you to any country, check whether they are registered with the National Employment Authority. But as you raised, sometimes, it's Evelyne actually raised it, that sometimes the agent is registered, but then now, they are also involved in trafficking, in short. Now, who becomes accountable at that point? That's where the government becomes accountable. Because you see, another thing, where someone, for instance, there's that foreign contract, one has signed a foreign contract with such an agent. It has been attested to by the labor officer. The labor officer is a government agent. The moment they are attesting to it, they are accountable. The government is accountable. Besides that, when such contracts are attested to by labor officers, these agents are required to sign for a security bond on the safety of this person when they leave the country. such that if this, not only on the safety, but also on the adherence of the employment contract. If the employment contract is not adhered to, that's a good place to hold the government accountable for inaction on its part. But then now again, I'll raise a challenge with that in terms of also, you know, a lot of times when you look at even the rights, social and economic rights, there's something we call progressive realization, whereby the government says, based on the resources and everything we have, we are doing progressive realization. And then, of course, now, looking at the three arms of government, there is separation of powers. The judiciary sometimes cannot overarchingly move so much into the roles of the legislature. We can't push the legislature. For instance, when you're saying about amending the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act to remove the fines. Unfortunately, the judiciary cannot strictly, although they can have certain provision or implement the act in certain ways, they cannot directly tell the executive, you need to amend this law with the legislature, you need to amend this law within 30 days. That is the role of the legislature. It cannot be interfered with. But there are other opportunities that come. For instance, recently there was the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Bill 2025, and government wanted to amend this act, and they asked for public participation. So what did we do? Civil society, survivors, we came together, and now these recommendations that some of them you are mentioning from that act, we submitted them to the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Secretariat, so that they can be able to amend. And especially that recommendation of fines was one of the big recommendations that we put in there. So we can also act on the opportunities that are there. We can lobby as well, but then at the same time, they are limited. We can also go through the court through public interest litigation, but unfortunately, sometimes our hands may be held a bit due to public interest litigation. But as I conclude, due to separation of powers. But as I conclude, all I'll say is we can't always come from a negative perspective. We can't say nothing can be done, or we can't keep saying that nothing is being done. We can look at what is being done and we ride on that. There's a bill, we can ride on that to give recommendation. Government is celebrating, for instance, the World Against Trafficking tomorrow. There is a platform where the government, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Secretariat is going to be. We can levy on that. A survivor has come in the country, we can support them through the criminal process. A survivor has come back in the country, we can support them through the constitutional petition process. So there's still so much positives that are there, and that's what we should be riding on.
Fair enough. Just before I come back to Evelyne, because we're almost winding up this conversation, we just have a few minutes. There's one other concern, and there's the concern of the rise in number of Kenyans being lured into online cyber fraud rings, most specifically in Southeast Asia, and this is a growing trend. Apart from Kenyans going to the Gulf, how then can we also address this particular issue? Because I've seen cases of Kenyans who have been taken there. They get, they're abused every day physically. They're tortured, and they do have a way to, come back to the country. Even as we address matters human trafficking to the Gulf countries, there's the concern about these other, Southeast Asia, concerns about the ring in Southeast Asia, which are also exploiting Kenyans and torturing them there. Nobody, is really focusing on that as well.
All right, so for this, what we actually call this is trafficking for forced criminality, because you find they are being forced into online exploitation and being sometimes forced to commit cyber crimes. And right now, what I know the government has done through, for instance, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Bill, they have tried to bring this into bring some amendment into the act to provide for this forced criminality that is online, so that it's also defined as exploitation. Although if you were to also define the law as it is, what is occurring in terms of online forced criminality is already exploitation. So already it falls within the law as part of trafficking in person. Now, on the other hand, what we also need to do is now we need to increase actually as civil society in terms of our advocacy. We need to move beyond just advocating in terms of being borders, contracts, domestic work. We need to move beyond that. We need to move now to educating persons. How do you get exploited online? What does online exploitation look like? Because you find sometimes a lot of these cases, they are recruited through online system. Getting also people to understand, especially a lot of Kenyans who think they cannot be trafficked. anyone can be trafficked. For instance, for us right now, we work with a lot of university legal aid clinic students, university law students. So we communicate and educate them and tell them, even you can be trafficked. Because a lot of times we find the persons who are being trafficked in these cases are people who ideally they would not think they fall within the category, because they are thinking perhaps because the work is not domestic work, it's something else. I'm going to work from home or something of the sort. They cannot be trafficked. So for us to move, because trafficking is evolving, so our work also in terms of our responses to both prevent and respond to also need to change to govern what is changing.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'll give you all an opportunity to give us your parting shot. Labda, Evelyne, wewe jambo lako la mwisho, na labda tu specifically kwa zile familia za watu ambao wamepelekwa ugaibuni, labda wamepitia mateso, wamerejea, kutokana na ile experience ulipitia, familia zako ama jamaa zako wakiweza kukutoroka, labda ungeambia nini familia za wale ambao labda pia wanapitia yale ambayo umepitia kule ugaibuni?
Okay, kenye naweza waambia ni kitu moja, ni mtu wako akirudi Kenya umpokee venye yako, kwa sababu uko siku rahisi. Kama mimi nilienda kazi nilirudi mkono tupu. Ni rahisi sana mtu atoke huko bila pesa. Ana guarantee atalipwa kila mwezi. Hakuna guarantee.
Sawa, shukran sana. Father, you give me your final submissions, and also Wakili, the conference scheduled for 27th and 28th at Tangaza University. It's under the theme Human Trafficking in a Changing World, Interdisciplinary Pathways for Prevention, Protection, Prosecution, and Human Dignity. It will, of course, bring all stakeholders together to address this particular issue of, human trafficking, which, like Wakili did put it, rightly, it is evolving by day. So, just tell us something brief about it, even as you give us your parting shot.
Okay. Aiming at also understanding trafficking in the digital world was also a major focus. But again, also on mitigation methods and collaboration, so that it's not a one person, one group, but everyone involved in it. And so it was calling for more on collaboration. And again, also to put survivors, that their voice be heard. When we are making an activity, it's through their choice that is going to guide, not what we want them to do or what we think they can do, their choice. But also, again, aiming to, find common grounds, that we understand this is a problem, we have a problem, and we need now common effort in order to solve and work on it. And this was part of the so many conferences happening, so many activities happening of awareness, of education, in view of the celebration of the day of tomorrow, which is about, trafficking has become like a mask hidden under something else. And so that something else is false hope, very sweet promises. So as she had said earlier, that our people to understand is not always so sweet as it looks when it's in a paper, when I'm being presented, but to think ahead of the one who is promising. And number two, it was also to understand among ourselves, civil society and faith-based groups, that in as much as we are also making our own plans, also the traffickers, the scammers are also making their own plans, so that we also want to walk ahead of them in order to counter. And we're also trying to see, and in most of these activities, actually, we are partnering with the government, so that we are not in isolation. We are not like, gossiping the government. We wanted to contribute, wanted to give an input of where we can as civil society, as church people, so that at the end of it, what is the center of all this discussion? The human person, the sanctity and dignity of human life.
Fair enough. Wakili, even as our father talks about the digital space, this conference, what were the crucial areas, and what solutions are we looking at, as we try and engage the government in ensuring that these resolutions are fully implemented?
First of all, what we are focusing on is first giving the holistic support to survivors. Holistic support, like what you're hearing from Evelyne, in the sense that as much as for me, my role is access to justice legal support, if this survivor has come back in the country, if they don't have food, if their health is not okay, if they don't have economic empowerment, then even if I've provided them with the legal support, I've enabled them access justice, they have a very high likelihood of being re-trafficked. Because what was the reason at the beginning why they were trafficked or why they were looking for a job and someone took advantage of them? There was poverty, they were looking for an employment opportunity. So if we do not address those root causes, if we do not provide these employment opportunities, if we do not address this poverty, then there's nothing much that we are doing. Besides that now is looking at the World Day Against Trafficking tomorrow. The theme is trapped under the scam. Looking at this online trafficking, online exploitation. So we need, as I previously mentioned, the need for both government, which I know already they are doing, both for government, civil society, and all actors in this space to now update our response mechanisms. If people are being exploited online, then we need to put some of our responses online. We need to have ways for consulars, embassies in these countries, because those are the main offices that have a very easy access. Before you even say that civil society goes and establishes safe houses in these countries, the consulate offices and the embassies in those particular countries have more power in these particular offices. So moving their responses from in-person responses to online responses, this enables better protection and better service delivery to survivors. So that is all I would conclude it. But before that, I would speak to every Kenyan who is in the household. First of all, anyone can be trafficked. Just know that anyone can, no one is above it. Even myself, I can be trafficked. So when you know that, you move with vigilance. When you move with vigilance, anytime you get an opportunity, look at CTIP, there's Counter Trafficking in Person Secretariat, organizations like CAT Kenya, AMCA Africa, NAHUSOM, so many organizations that can assist you attest. So I have gotten this opportunity. Is this opportunity really a real opportunity, or is there an opportunity for trafficking? Look at all these issues. When you're going to that country, make sure you have the contact or know what are the safe spaces in this country. If I am trafficked, where can I report? What are the numbers of the consulate or of the embassy in this particular country? And finally, look at the documentation that you're being given. As I mentioned, attestation by the labor officer. And finally, what visa am I being given? Okay. The moment you're being given a visitor's visa and you're going for work, there's a problem. The moment you're being given a tourist visa or a student visa and you're going for work, there's a big problem. So ask all those questions. And please, I know we, as a joke, like Africans, we don't like saying we are moving out of the country. You only say it when you're there because you don't want your village to do that thing. But talk to someone else. Sometimes you get assistance even from talking to someone else. I know someone who just talked to another person in a plane and said, I'm going to Saudi to do this and this. And the other person was like, oh, all the best. But then have this number of the consulate, of the embassy, or if anything happens to you. Just tell your family, tell your friends where you're going so that people can know where to start if, for instance, you disappear and no one can reach you.
Okay. I've forgotten one thing. And, we've run out of time. But, Father, in just 30 seconds or 1 minute, there's a big concern about children who are, at high risk of, human trafficking. Have you dealt with these cases? How high of a number are we talking about in terms of, the grassroots level? And maybe finally, what would you tell parents out there?
Okay, very shortly, yeah, the trafficking now is taking a high number of children. At least, and there is a particular section that is of interest of Garissa. We have seen Garissa children being transferred to or trafficked to Uganda. And a very big concern is to Libya. And through torture, not really that they are just kidnapped as normal kidnapping. They are taken rude in a very friendly way, but eventually we know they are tortured. Parents being asked for ransom to pay. And when they are there also, they are selling them to the other opposite side. Apart from asking the parents to really be keen, be on the alert the authorities, we are also asking the bigger parent, who is the government. These children, they pass through certain roads where there are roadblocks, there are checks, and there are people who are involved. That bigger part of the government to ensure security of this. There's no way, as we have been always talking about, documents are important. How do they manage to reach Uganda? Which document do they have to use to go there? To Libya? And so, yeah, to be keen from all sides, to be responsible, to be dutiful, so that we can protect the generation of tomorrow.
Okay, pretty much. Thank you very much, Father. Thank you very much, Wakili. Shukran sana Evelyne kwa kukubali kuja kutuelezea hali yako na yale ambayo ulipitia na labda maombi yako kwa serikali na familia za waliopitia yale ambayo familia za wale ambao wanapitia yale waliopitia wakiweza kurejea usaidizi ambao wanaweza kupata. Of course, that was the conversation. There's a lot to touch on, but because of time we have to wrap up affairs here on KTN Prime. But this is an ongoing conversation. Like I alluded to, that particular conference happened. We hope that the resolutions of that particular conference will be fully implemented, and the government will indeed also focus much in addressing this particular concern. That particular report released in 2024 talked about the funding in battling or tackling this particular menace being increased, but there calls for more, or rather more allocation in terms of funding to ensure that we can be able to tackle and reduce the numbers of the cases of Kenyans who are being trafficked abroad, and some of them sadly coming back into the country in caskets, others coming back with their health conditions deteriorated, needing much help. So there's also that concern in regards to the government putting in place mechanisms and measures to ensure that when they come back, they are reintegrated back into the community in a much more better way by providing them with be it food, shelter, and even psychological support, which is very, very important. But that was the conversation here on human trafficking. Until next time, do have yourself a wonderful night. To the entire team behind the scenes that made this possible, many thanks. Good night for those who are not sleeping, and of course this is also for viewers abroad. Continue, or rather enjoy the rest of our programming, and like always, God bless.